Hi everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Redmi Note 7 Pro, which I have been using for the past 2 weeks or so. I basically just made it my phone for the past 2 weeks, and now I'm going to tell you what I think. So the Redmi Note 7 Pro is the latest phone from Redmi, which is kind of like a offshoot of Xiaomi, which do make really good phones as far as I'm concerned. And this is their latest phone. This is the Pro version, not the Redmi Note 7, but the Redmi Note 7 Pro. Now the difference between the Pro version and the non-Pro version is that this is more powerful, it has a more powerful processor and more RAM. So let's just go through some of the basic specs of this phone, then we'll go into more detail of what I think it's actually like to use on a daily basis. So the Redmi Note 7 Pro has a 6.3-inch LCD IPS screen with a resolution of 1080 by 2340. The screen has a pixel density of 409 pixels per inch. It's got one front-facing selfie camera that shoots 13 megapixel photos, and it has got two rear-facing cameras, the main cameras, one of which is 5 megapixels and the other one which is 48 megapixels. Yes, that is correct, 48 megapixels. It's powered by a Snapdragon 675 processor, which is fairly new, was only released at the end of last year. The phone comes with several storage and RAM options, but the highest or the most expensive option is 128 gigabytes of internal memory and 6 gigabytes of RAM. And it comes with all the kind of standard sensors you'd expect. So it's got GPS, Bluetooth, fingerprint sensor in the center of the body here. The only sensor it doesn't have, which you would kind of probably miss, is NFC, so you can't do like contactless payments on this phone. And it has a 4000 mAh battery, which I found lasts around about a day and a half, maybe 2 days at a push. And I think the most interesting thing in that kind of lineup is the 48 megapixel camera, which I will go into later. And right from the start, let me just say, how cool is this color? Like, I love this. But all in all, I do really like the design of this phone. I mean, I know all phones are basically the same these days. Also, the position of the fingerprint scanner is much better than the other phones that I've used recently. And finally, the screen to body ratio I think is really good, mostly because of this teardrop notch here rather than like the band that goes across most times. I mean, this is just much more user-friendly. It doesn't interfere with the screen as much. The one annoying thing, well, it's not really annoying, but the one downside of the design of this phone is how these cameras here, the rear main cameras, stick out, all just slightly stick out, as you can see from the body. But now let's talk about, like I said, the key feature of this phone, those cameras at the rear, the 48 megapixel camera. I did a lot of testing where I took a lot of photos with these cameras because, I mean, this is basically the main selling feature of this phone. Now, the reason it can do this is because of the new processor that's inside this phone, and it's just been upgraded. It's not the most powerful processor, but it uses new technology which allows the cameras to take 48 megapixel photos. Now, what that means is that when you take a photo, you'll be able to crop into it, so remove some of the border, remove some of the edges, and it won't reduce the quality of that photo. It will be able to retain the similar quality. Obviously, if you zoom very, very far in, then the quality will go down, but there's just a lot more options there to play with. There's a lot more pixels and data to play with rather than a camera that shoots, say, 18 megapixel photos. If you cropped into that, it would lose a lot of quality. The actual lenses themselves are doing a really good job. They're Sony lenses, good dynamic range, captures color very well, slightly oversaturated sometimes. Sometimes it puts a kind of like yellowish tinge to the photo, but it's not like hugely noticeable in most situations. I think they match up to phones that are much more expensive than the Redmi Note 7 Pro. I mean, they're not quite at the quality of, say, the latest iPhone and the latest Samsung, but considering that those phones cost 3 or 4 times as much as this phone, the cameras there are not 4 times better. I mean, they're probably like 10% better. But these 48 megapixel photos, we can see here what happens when you crop in. The quality is not reduced as much. You can zoom right in, you can look very, very closely into details and still retain those details very well. Also, the addition of the second camera, the 5 megapixel depth sensor, that's basically what it's used for, to detect depth, allows you to kind of refocus your photo, so make the background blurred, and that will do a lot more accurately than if it just had one lens. The Redmi Note 7 Pro also has a night mode, so for shooting in low light conditions, in night, in the evening, and it actually works really well. You do have to keep the camera still when you do it because it takes a few seconds to take in all the lights, which is why it improves the overall quality. But when you do, it does make a difference. Night night photos look good. I mean, I've took it in some darker areas, or at least in the evening, or surrounded by artificial light, and while it's not the best in the world, you will see some noise, you will see some kind of, that fuzziness in the darkest areas. It does make a big difference, especially in the sky. I mean, this photo just taken outside my balcony here, I think looks really good. Now, the front-facing camera is just a standard 13 megapixel selfie camera, and it has that kind of blurred effect, so you can blur the background, but it doesn't work quite as well as, for example, phones with two selfie cameras, one that can detect depth and one that can detect your face. So it's kind of using AI to work out what's the background and what's your face, and I just don't think it works quite as well. So if you were looking for a kind of a budget phone with good camera technology, I don't think you can really do better than the Redmi Note 7 Pro right now. Now, how about video? Video killed the radio star. The Note 7 Pro can shoot 4K video, so that's a good start. Don't expect anything absolutely mind-blowing, but for the vast majority of people, they're not going to notice the difference. The image looks sharp, the image looks colorful. I think it looks pretty accurate to what is in reality. It doesn't kind of oversaturate or overexpose what's there. It also has a slow motion mode. Good. There's a lot of data there to play with, and I think for the vast majority of people, the video is going to do you well. It's going to be absolutely fine. Now, let's move on to gaming, because that is what I've been using this phone for quite a lot, to test out this new processor, to test out the GPU, to test out the 6 gigabytes of RAM. Is it enough to play the latest games? Even though this is quite a cheap phone, like I keep saying, you still want to be able to play the latest games and run the latest, biggest, most powerful app. And I can tell you right now that this phone can run pretty much anything that I've tested it. I've downloaded about 6 games that I've tried to test this with, and these are all pretty big games like Asphalt 9, PUBG, Warship Blitz, all 3D games that are going to test the capabilities of this phone. No lag, loaded very quickly, and they loaded the highest quality graphics automatically. I mean, I always like to download PUBG to test the phones that I review, because that game automatically detects what phone you're using and then sets the graphics to whatever it thinks it can run. So with this phone, it automatically detected and set the highest level of graphics. So obviously PUBG thinks that this is a decent phone to load these big maps in 3D. Now what I will say is that the processor and the GPU in this phone, while it is new and it uses new technology, which is why it can shoot these 48 megapixel images, it is limited in other ways. It's not the most powerful processor in the world. So HDR is probably not going to be an option if you like HDR gaming, but the vast majority of you will not notice the difference, and in the majority of cases runs every game that I've played very, very smoothly and quickly. It's also super responsive, absolutely no issues with responsiveness and, loading apps, multitasking. This is no different from basically any other much more expensive phone. You are going to get a very good deal getting this phone. It may not be the absolute most powerful. Some phones will load the games quicker and perhaps load slightly better graphics. But for the next year or so, this phone's going to be able to run pretty much anything that the App Store can throw at it. Now, this phone runs a version of MIUI 10, which is kind of Xiaomi's version of Android. But what I like about MIUI 10 is it makes the touch kind of responsiveness, because obviously it doesn't have a home button, but like to go back, to go forward, like you just swipe up, swipe down, and side to side, and I got used to that very quickly. I like MIUI 10. It does have some bloatware, which you can mostly uninstall. So yeah, guys, I think that's about it, to be honest. I'm not sure what more I can say. The only other thing is that, like I said, the battery life lasts about a day and a half, 2 days if you push it. It has a USB-C port, so fast charging. I'm going to be doing a comparison between the Redmi Note 7 Pro and the Pocophone F1, which is the other phone that I've been using, and is also a very cheap, powerful, very good value for money phone. So I will do a comparison between these two. That's going to be the next video. But my verdict for this phone is that I really, really like it. I really like the design. It looks so cool. Looks better than a lot of much more expensive phones. The cameras work really well. That 48 megapixel lens is amazing. You can do so much with it. The cameras, for the value, for the price of the phone, it's just such a good feature to have. So yeah, I've really enjoyed using this phone. In fact, I may make it my new main phone. Like I say, at the moment I've got the Pocophone, have that for a while. I may make this my main phone now, because I see no reason why not to. So if you are looking for a cheap phone, very good value for money, can do pretty much anything that much more expensive phones can do, I would super recommend this, and especially if you're into photography and you really like taking photos. That's the Redmi Note 7 Pro. Hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will get back to you as soon as I can. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you around. Bye.